Hello, welcome to my video. Today we'll be doing IGCSE Past Year Paper 060623 October-November 2018 series. And this is question 5. Given these two matrices, find the first part of the question, the inverse of A. Notice that this is just a 2 marks question, so all you have to do is to memorize this formula. So we've given any matrix with the number at different position A, B, C, D, simply switch the number at position A and D and put the numbers and put negative sign in front of the numbers at position C and B. So this is all you have to do to modify your matrix. But this is another part you have to be careful of. This is 1 over A multiplied by D, the numbers in these two positions, minus the numbers, the product of the numbers at position C and B. Make sure you didn't make mistakes over here. Just press your calculator a few more times. So with the given A matrix over here, we substitute the numbers into the position over here, A, B, C, D. So pretty straightforward. We just put the sign first immediately in front of the numbers at position C and B, and in this case is 1 and 3. So put a negative sign in front of 1 and 3 and switch the position of 4 and 2. So now so at first it's 2 and 4, now it's 4 and 2. The fraction part over here, you can always refer back to the original matrices, so you are not confused by the negative here. Even though the negative here doesn't make will not change your final answer, but don't worry about the negative sign over here. So always refer back to the original matrix when you calculate your fraction part of the inverse matrix. So it's actually product of A and D. So just write down 2 multiplied by 4 minus B and C. In this case is 3 and 1. So it's 2 multiplied by 4 minus 3 and 1, which is pretty straightforward. So it's 8 multiplied by minus 3 for the fraction part over here. And then you will get your answer 1 over 5. And then with the matrix parts, remain unchanged. You don't have to substitute 1 over 5 into the matrix, because we might be using this answer in the following part, in the next part of this question. Then we move on to the second part of this question. Find the matrix C such that CA equals to B. This is another 2 marks question over here. So before you carry on with calculation, you can always manipulate the given equation here. So to find C, we have to get rid of A. To get rid of A, we simply have to multiply A with its inverse. So it's A multiplied by A inverse. This part over here will give us identity matrices, which is basically equals to 1. So we can omit this part later on, but we have to always remember that the other side of this equation, we have to multiply B with the inverse of A as well. And then when we put in this way, it becomes clearer to us what we need to find. So A multiplied by A inverse is 1, so we can omit this part. So it becomes only C on the left hand side of this equation. And all we have to find is the multiplication of B and A inverse. And we have A inverse in the first part. And the matrix B over here is given on top. So it's basically, so the 1 over 5 over here, you don't have to move it into the brackets. You can always move it in front of these two matrices. So the position of 1 over 5 can be changed, but the position of these two matrices cannot, because the sequences matter. So you cannot change B. You cannot change the B here. You cannot move it to the back of here, but you can change the 1 over 5 to help us with the calculation. This is the basic law of the matrix multiplication. So after we move the 1 over 5 in front, just carry on with your matrix multiplication. If you need further explanation on how to carry out the multiplication and then the basic rules and laws of when you do your multiplication, I can make another video on that. Let me know by commenting at the bottom. So this is how you carry out your multiplication. You may refer after you have tried it yourself. And this is the answer you get after you press all these numbers into your calculator. So 1 multiplied by 4 plus 4 multiplied by -1, you will get 0. The 1 over 5 here, you don't have to put it in the bracket. You don't have to put it inside the matrix. It's the same. Examiner would know. Then we move on to the third part of this question. The matrix, find the matrix D such that the inverse of A multiplied by D plus B will give us identity matrix. So this is a bit more complicated than the equation given in the second part, but do not panic. It's because we have the inverse of A being calculated over here. We have the given B here, and we know identity matrix here can be written in this form: A multiplied by A, the inverse. So all we have to find is D. We have only one unknown here, so do not panic. You may modify your equation again by writing down what we have known. Immediately change this I over here into A, the inverse, multiplied by A. It doesn't matter, A multiplied by A, the inverse, or inverse of A multiplied by A will be the same, because they are the same thing. However, if there are two different matrices, then we cannot do it in this way. So we carry on. We can move the parts where they have common factor into one side and leave the B on the other side. So because they have the common factors, the inverse A over here, so we move the inverse A multiplied by D to the right hand side. So it becomes A, the inverse, multiplied by A minus A, the inverse, multiplied by D. Then we can further simplify it in this way. Move the inverse out of the brackets, because this is a common factor, and then we have to find A minus D. But we need to find D. But before we find D, we have to get rid of the inverse in front of here. Notice that this is matrix. This is not a normal numerical calculation. You cannot do it by B divided by A, the inverse. It doesn't work that way. But you can always multiply A, the inverse, with A to get rid of A, the inverse. But when you multiply by A, your left hand side have to multiply by A as well. Have to always be careful in this part. And when you multiply, when you get rid of A, the inverse, you will be left with what is inside the brackets over here, because this is basically equals to 1 again, and A and B remains the same. So AB equals to A minus D. Then it becomes straightforward to us that to find D, we simply have to use the A matrix here minus the product of these two matrices A and B. Okay, so this is how we analyze one single equation. You don't have to write that all down. This is just my train of thoughts. If it helps, you can just simply write the last line here, D equals to A minus B, if you can spot it immediately the moment you see, when you look at this equation. But it's usually but it's actually good to write down everything, but you have to write, but you can actually omit parts where you think that it may not be necessary. And you may try to calculate it by yourself first, and this will be the numerical answer, my calculator answer here. So to find A and B, you have to multiply these two matrices A and B, which is given on top over here, A and B, and to continue with the calculation, you just carry on with your matrix multiplication. Press your calculator to check your answer after you have written down, and then you will get your AB. This is your AB. Then you use back the formula over here that you find. In order to find D, you have to use A and the product of AB. So you use A minus the product of AB. Then you get your D at last. So this is a 3 marks question. The marks will be allocated for this multiplication process of AB. 1 mark over here, and your final answer for D will be another mark. And your train of thoughts, it can be shortened into one single line or like a few lines with this is the most important lines you have to include in your final answer. Or we say this and this is what you need most importantly when you calculate or when you answer during your exam.